Welcome everyone. This is DAP441. Hopefully you're in the right place. Today we're going to be talking about where are your secrets, where are your keys, where are your certificates. We often see customers that want to have strong monitoring and observability around how their secrets and their keys and their certificates are used. So that's what we're going to cover today. And we're going to show a demo. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of to set the stage about what the services are. And then we're going to show a cool demo of these dashboards. So Praveen, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I hope I'm audible till the end. My name is Praveen Nair. I'm a senior security specialist at AWS. I work with customers in North America on their security issues, and this is one of the things that has come up a lot of times. So we built this solution so that you can build up on top of it. We have published this in GitHub, AWS samples, and we will share that link as well. But yeah, before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background, but yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Praveen. And I'm Zach Miller. I'm a principal security SA. I mostly cover our cryptography services, so if you have questions about KMS or private CA or keys and certificates, I'll answer those. I'll attempt to answer your security lake questions as well. We'll see. I'm from Chicago. Decided to rep that today. So what we're going to talk about today is what is observability, first off. How does it differ from like logging and monitoring, and kind of throw a lot of those terms around, so I want to be crystal clear about what we mean by observability. We're going to talk a little bit about Security Lake, Amazon Security Lake, because that is a key part of the solution. Some of the other services we use, like AWS Config, I'll touch on those a little bit too. And then I'm going to talk about what is our solution, what kind of KPIs or key performance indicators are we monitoring, what are we looking at, and kind of like how can you build on this to maybe productionalize something like this in your own organization. And then of course we'll leave time for questions at the end, but want it to be interactive. I can see everyone kind of, so please raise your hands if you have questions, call them out. Happy to answer those anytime. Feel free to interrupt. So what need are we trying to address? Probably everyone here knows this, but if you have a large organization, it's likely you're using cryptography somewhere. You're probably encrypting data. You're probably terminating TLS using a certificate. You have secrets that help you log into databases maybe. So oftentimes customers will have a lot of these different assets, and either like a regulation or standard like PCI. I think the new version says, hey, you have to have an inventory of your cryptographic keys, for example, right? And then you also have new, I'll say trends or concerns like post-quantum cryptography and kind of like a quantum computer potentially being able to break asymmetric cryptography like RSA, right? And so organizations now are thinking, okay, with post-quantum coming, I need to have an understanding of like where am I using certs, what kind of key algorithms am I using, because I might have to go replace those in the semi-near future, right? But you also have things like operations. Maybe it's not a security thing, and it's, hey, my operations team needs to know how often these keys are accessed because we're seeing like throttling, or we're seeing, potential issues, or maybe there's a certificate that's about to expire, right? And you want to be notified of that because if that certificate expires, it might lead to an outage. Suddenly your web traffic, they're getting errors basically when they try to access your website. So security operations, just general security, kind of getting an inventory of what you have. But then you also have like executives oftentimes want to have some understanding of like how cryptography is being used in their organization for the reasons I stated before. And so we wanted to kind of create a dashboard with like high-level things that your CISO, for example, could look at and say, okay, we have this many KMS keys, we have this many certificates that are expiring in the next 90 days, things like that. And then lastly, auditors, right? A lot of times you don't want to give some auditor full access to your AWS account to go see what's happening there, so you can give them kind of a nice clean dashboard that shows what they need to see, give them more read-only access to the kind of information they want to consume. So again, I talked about like kind of differentiating what is observability. If you look at this kind of spectrum here, obviously this is open to interpretation a little bit, but our view is you have logging, which is kind of like your CloudTrail log. It shows you this API happened. It was a get secret value, secrets manager call, and so someone pulled a password to access a database maybe. Then you have monitoring, which kind of gets more into like you have metrics and you're seeing like maybe you're starting to get to those KPIs. Visibility would be you're getting like performance and how the various pieces work together. Yeah, I pulled this secret, but then I used it to go access a database, right? And then observability is like where you really get into like the more comprehensive. We have all these logs, and we also are doing like some KPIs around what the performance looks like on these resources, and maybe we're tying things together a little bit more. I have this certificate is expiring, and also it's associated with this load balancer, for example, right? And then we get into like what should we be observing. I think there's a lot of answers here, and we're not going to cover all of them. But we want to think about like IAM roles and IAM users. How many do you have? How many are they? Or how are they used? Things like permission sets and identity center and root user actions maybe. Again, we're not covering all of this, so just to be clear. But S3 buckets, databases. You have all these different resources, right? And this is where this talk is really going to focus: the cryptographic assets. I think if you really were to build some of this in production, you'd want more than just this. You'd want to get into IAM roles and everything else. But cryptography is my thing, and I like talking about it, so that's what we're focused on. And I mentioned some of these services earlier, but these are kind of the three main services that we're monitoring and kind of creating that observability around. One is AWS Key Management Service, or KMS. Probably a lot of you, or hopefully, actually, who here is familiar with KMS or uses KMS? Hopefully everyone, or close. Okay, perfect. So that's our key management system. You can almost think of it as like a key vending machine. It spits out these keys that other services like S3 and EBS can use to encrypt your data. We also have Certificate Manager and Private Certificate Authority. These are for, as it sounds, certificates. You can issue certificates, associate them with load balancers, issue certificates from Private CA for things like code signing, email encryption. And then, of course, we have Secrets Manager, which can store really any type of secret, but it's primarily by customers used for like database passwords and API tokens, sometimes SSH keys, things like that. Okay, so let's look at like what a typical security journey or observability journey is for a customer. Maybe you start with a single application. Maybe you're like a small business, or you're a large business, but you've just started on AWS, and you have one app, a couple roles, maybe one KMS key, a couple secrets for a database. That's not too hard to monitor, right? You can kind of manually look through CloudTrail or kind of look at the console to see what's happening. It's not too big of a deal. When you get into multi-application, you have 10 applications, a bunch of different roles. Maybe you have 100 secrets. Okay, you could probably still maybe do that. You want some processes, but you might be okay to do that manually. When you get into global scale, a bunch of different regions, this becomes a problem. You can't just go through and kind of manually grok through these CloudTrail logs and say, oh yeah, I know everything that's happening with my secrets and my keys. And this is where you get into, you got to start aggregating these logs and trying to visualize them and understand what's really happening. So I think that this is kind of the target we're trying to get to is, somewhere in that multi-application or global scale realm. How do you monitor and how do you observe your assets in that world? Okay, so the service that I think I've mentioned once or twice, but Amazon Security Lake. Who here uses Amazon Security Lake or is familiar with it? A couple people, all right. Okay. So I will start by saying, the problem that Security Lake was set out to solve is this kind of world where you have all these different assets, all these different services. I already mentioned like the cryptographic services, but you have a ton more, right? You have VPC flow logs, you have DNS logs. You might have all these security agents, including partner security agents, right? And they're all kind of making their own logs, and you want to be able to aggregate those and have them understandable, right? Because they also probably have different log formats too. And so in the past, you'd have to maybe create like custom Lambda functions and pump all that into an S3 bucket and try to normalize it yourself into like Parquet or some other type of format. And it became challenging for customers, right? Because that's not even all. That's a few of the things that you could have, but there's tons of partner solutions that have their own logs and things like that, right? So Security Lake was built, again, to address that need, where it does a lot of the operational heavy lifting for you in terms of like setting up your data lake, by creating S3 buckets and glue tables and things like that. But probably most importantly, it normalizes all the data for you. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But that's kind of why, or one of the main reasons at least, we picked Security Lake for the solution we built is it makes our life easy, right? Like we really don't have to do all that operational overhead to set it up. We don't have to like try to get every single log format from every single type of resource into the right format so we can run queries against it. And Amazon Security Lake just makes that easy, right? You kind of click once, you turn it on, and it starts gathering that data and aggregating that data, at least for the resources and kind of streams that we are interested in. I talked about this a little bit, but what's really happening under the hood with Security Lake is it's basically building those S3 buckets for you where you're going to store the data. It's creating those glue tables that you're going to use to kind of index the data and do ETL and all that stuff so that you can go and query those, that data. And it's normalizing it into OCSF. And let me see if I can get this right. I always forget. It's Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. So that is a framework that we built in collaboration with Splunk and I think 18 other partners that helps you to create this kind of standardized format for your security log data. Yeah, and so I think that, again, that's why we picked Amazon Security Lake, because it kind of makes our life easier in terms of normalizing that data. That's the main thing. It's not too difficult to go create those S3 buckets. It helps that it does it for you, but the normalization is really the key point. And so, at the end of the day, you come back to this model. If you remember the earlier picture, it had all these crossing lines and confusion. Now we just have some data sources. They pump all of that into Amazon Security Lake, much of it automatically if you don't have custom sources. Ours is all kind of automatically gathered because they're all AWS services. And you can have subscribers. We don't really have that in this model, but you might if you were to do this on your own in production. And then you can use automation to do remediation. You can do visualization like we're doing here, and you're going to see in a second with Amazon QuickSight. But much cleaner model, much easier to kind of ingest all that data and use that data, right? One other thing I want to call out is you might ask, okay, well, I have a bunch of accounts. I have a bunch of regions that I operate in. Do I need to build this in every region? No. That is the nice thing as well about Security Lake is you can roll up into one region, basically, or multiple. And so on this slide, for example, we're showing, hey, if you have data residency requirements, maybe you don't want all the logs from your KMS keys in North America, to go to some region in EMEA or vice versa, probably vice versa. And so, what we do here is everything's in North America, and so we rolled it up into US East 1. But you could easily have multiple roll-up regions where, okay, all my EMEA data rolls up into one of the EMEA regions, and my North American data rolls up into, say, US East 1. So just wanted to put that out there that while we're not doing multiple roll-up regions, you can absolutely do that to have that data residency in place or protections. Any questions so far? I didn't stop yet. No? Okay. I know everybody wants to get to the exciting demo part. I'll be quick. So Security Lake sources, there's several of them here. We're really focused on CloudTrail logs and Security Hub findings here. Some of these others weren't quite as relevant to our use case, but you can absolutely pull in DNS queries from Route 53 and your flow logs that tell you what kind of data is coming into your VPC. AWS config. So I didn't talk about this yet, but there are a few things that we wanted to get out of our logs, basically, that you don't get necessarily inherently in CloudTrail. So as you probably know, CloudTrail is focused on API calls. So when you call a decrypt action against KMS, that's in CloudTrail. When you create a key in KMS, that's obviously in CloudTrail. That's an API call. Same with get secret value and things like that for Secrets Manager. But you will not see in CloudTrail events that happen that are not an API call. So imagine you're rotating your secret in Secrets Manager. That creating or enabling the rotation, that is an API call, but the actual secret rotation itself, not an API. So that will not show up in CloudTrail. So there are CloudWatch events for that, and we can get that data as well in config. And so Praveen's going to talk about this in more detail, but we created some custom config rules that would look for things like, has this KMS key ever been used? When was the last time it was used? Things like that. And that's a pretty common one from customers is, how do I see the last time this key was used? Because one of the reasons I don't think I talked about it earlier that you might want to do this is cost reduction, right? Because say you have, I don't know, thousands and thousands or maybe more than that, hundreds of thousands of secrets and KMS keys. These things can incur costs, right? Your customer managed KMS key is $1 per month. And so if you have hundreds of these or thousands of these or tens of thousands of these, you might see your costs start to go up in a way that you don't like, right? And so you want to reduce those costs, but you might be concerned, what if I delete this key and the data that's associated with is now gone, right? So that's why we wanted to create something like this to show you, okay, this KMS key has never been used. That key is probably fine to delete, right? If it hasn't been used in, say, 90 days, I would say maybe keep it around a little bit longer to make sure no one's using it, because there are services that don't call KMS very often, like EBS, for example, because it only calls KMS when the volume is detached or reattached or the instance is restarted. So there are some caveats with this, but it does at least give you a good view of like how often are these keys being used, and are there ones that maybe it's only been used once in the last year. You can reach out to the application team and say like, do you really need this key? If it's a development key, maybe they get rid of it, you save some money, right? So I guess to kind of follow, or there we go, to finish up on the config thing, that is why we brought in config, is because it allows us to create those custom config rules with Lambda functions. They get you some of that data you can't just get from CloudTrail by itself. And then the KPIs we're really looking at for these different services, I'm not going to read through all of them here, but we're kind of looking at what are the IAM roles that are getting a lot of access denied, because that might indicate someone's trying to access something they shouldn't, or it's just an operational issue that you probably want to fix. You have custom managed keys that rotation is not enabled. One slightly controversial thing that AWS does is we say, hey, you probably don't need to rotate your KMS keys unless you have a regulatory reason for it. There's a bunch of reasons for that if you want to get into it, find me afterwards, and I'll talk to you about why we say you don't necessarily need to rotate your KMS keys. But a lot of customers say, hey, I have to do this. I have an auditor that tells me I need to rotate these keys. And so we have a rule in there that's looking for where is KMS, where are your keys that they don't have rotation enabled. Again, I talked about the unused keys in 90 days. That one's really for like cost reduction. Certificates, we want to see what are your top certificate operations. That's more of like a kind of standard operation thing, just to see what kind of API calls are coming in. But then you also have things like, when are my certificates expiring, or I guess which ones are expiring within 60 days. And so that can help you understand where you might need to go out and manually replace certificates. For ACM, AWS Certificate Manager, there's a thing called Manage Renewal, and so it will automatically renew those certificates. But that only works with what we'd call like integrated resources, so like application load balancer or API gateway. We can go rotate those certificates for you, essentially, with no action needed on your behalf, at least if you use DNS name validation. But there are cases where maybe you have that private certificate on like an EC2 instance. Yeah.
That rotation in CloudTrail?
For certificates? So yes, it will be in CloudTrail because that is a new certificate, basically. Like when we rotate the certificate, we're basically just issuing a new one. And so you'll see an issue certificate call. Yeah, exactly. There won't be like it won't be a renewal API necessarily. It'll be another issue certificate call, but you will see that. Mm-hmm. A good question. I think there was a hand behind too. No? Okay. Yeah, so again, certificates, big thing there is expiring certificates, because you want to avoid outages, right? Secrets manager secrets. We do show the breakdown of like what percentage of your certificates are like get secret value versus describe secret, and that can kind of be helpful in terms of like we have a standard kind of breakdown of what we expect that to be. Like you should probably see mostly get secret value of people kind of retrieving that secret. If you're seeing like a ton of put secret value over and over again, or these other things, like I wouldn't say it indicates anything malicious, but it's a little strange. So you might want to look into that. But then you also have things like, when are the secrets accessed? Which secrets are most frequently accessed? And things like that, right? Because that might also give you an idea of like, what are my crown jewels, for lack of a better term? Like, what are the secrets that are really, really important? Okay, we have tons of people accessing this all the time. It's an important secret, things like that. And then similarly, we can look. We're looking for unused secrets in the last 90 days. Again, maybe you can go out and delete that, reduce your costs, right? So those are some breakdown of what we're looking for. And now I'm going to pass over to Praveen. He's going to talk about the architecture and then do the exciting part, which is the demo. And I will also say, we'll show this in a second, but we'll pull up a QR code here pretty soon. This solution is on GitHub, so you can absolutely go check that out while Praveen's showing the demo and after, and use it yourself if you'd like to.
Yep. Thank you, Zach. Hello, everybody. So I'll go over with the architecture diagram, but before that, I know I just want to emphasize once more, like, let's talk quickly about the scenario once more, like what we are trying to resolve, right? Like imagine you are a security lead and you're working on an organization. You have an AWS organization setup that is growing, and you have multiple accounts, and you want to make sure that your KMS keys are rotated, your secrets, are not exposed, and your certificates, you are aware that they don't get expired before, and they don't expire, and you don't go, and then they don't go unnoticed. So basically, you need to be aware what's happening where. Now, all this has to be done in a centralized way, and obviously, you know that there is no direct out-of-the-box way to do this centrally, right? So, how many of you actually have faced this problem, or actually facing this problem? Okay, so that's the problem we are going to solve today, right? So, what we're going to talk about.
Can I ask, like, I'm just curious, how did you solve it? Or have you solved it?
We don't use security links, so we basically include it all into one centralized log account. From there, we use a lot of like automation and the way APIs to go over. We
Yeah.
use an external observability platform and then build our own dashboards that essentially replicate what we probably do.
Okay, yeah. I was just curious, because I always want to hear how customers solve these problems.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so we're going to be using AWS native solutions, which will help you monitor these metrics and assets, and we'll capture all that for all the key information, the certificate information, and the secrets manager information. So just to go through a high level of the solution, this is the high level architecture diagram of the solution that we are going to be talking about. It starts all the way from the right side, wherein it's the CloudTrail logs. So we're going to capture everything from the CloudTrail logs, which is all the actions and API calls that are happening for your crypto services. Second, we're going to use AWS config rules to identify some custom configuration changes in your crypto services. Example, unused KMS keys. There's no direct way to get it. You have to actually call the API and get that data. And then there are others like unused secrets, DNS validation pending. That's one of the things. Like somebody tried to issue a public cert, the DNS validation was not completed, the cert is just lying there, it is pending. So you can identify that. How do you do that? You write a custom Lambda config rule. And we'll talk about that as well in this session. You need to know that AWS config doesn't have a direct integration into Security Lake. So the data from findings from config rules don't go into security. That's why what we do is we use Security Hub. So if you see the diagram, we are using Security Hub to get that data in. So the funneling is the rule identifies non-compliance, and that goes into Security Hub, which goes into Security Lake. That's the flow we have run. The next thing is, what is Security Lake doing here? It's normalizing all this data from different sources, and it's doing all the ETL at the backend, and it's kind of making it ready. It is creating a database. It's creating the tables that you require to query this data, whatever is collected, and we will be using Athena to query those. And once we use Athena to query those data, and I'll show you the queries that are written, and you can use that to now visualize it in QuickSight. So we will use those Athena queries that we create and query in Security Lake. We will put it in a QuickSight, and we will visualize however we want to. And that we will show you all that. All right. So any questions until now on the architecture and design right now? All right.
One thing I meant to ask and I didn't ask, is everyone here like familiar with cryptography and stuff? Like when I say DNS validation of a certificate, do you know what we mean and everything? Okay, perfect. If any of that is unclear, please raise your hand and ask. We can.
There's a question.
Cover that.
I was just saying.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. So that's the codes. You can scan it. You can look up in the GitHub. It should be available now. We have created a detailed README, step-by-step, explaining how you can install this solution and start working with it. It has we have the CloudFormation templates and everything in there. So I'll keep that up for a few seconds as I start my laptop.
Yeah, and while he's pulling that up, one other thing I'd say is this is definitely, a sample and not not fully something that you would productionalize necessarily. And so what we want from y'all, if you don't mind, is feedback, right? So like if you want to make pull requests or comments on the GitHub for things you'd like to see, or come up and find us after for things you'd like to see, we'd love to add more to this and continue to kind of build it. So definitely let us know about that. No, so we don't do any like Cypher suite monitoring in this. I would love to add something like that. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, this is a whole other topic that I could probably give an hour-long talk on. Find me after and we'll talk about it. My short answer is, it is a difficult problem because you have to look at the Cypher suites from all these different services and all these endpoints, right? You might have EC2 instances running IaaS that are using old Cypher suites. You might have an ALB that you can set security policy on there. So yes, it is definitely a problem that customers are facing. We, I will say, are looking into ways to resolve that at AWS. I don't know how much more I can say than that. But if you find me after, let's talk about it, because yes, that is a big challenge coming up for customers. Good question.
All right. So let's get started with the demo. The first part that we are going to look at is the AWS config side, and I'll walk you through the config. All right. So let's look at unused KMS keys. So this is a custom Lambda, this is a custom AWS config rule. And this rule is created to check if there are any CMKs that are not used in the last 90 days, or if there are any CMKs that has never been used at all. And this is installed across regions and accounts. We have a Lambda function at the backend that is being called, and which is basically going to check. And I'm going to show you the code for the Lambda function as well right now. So if you can see, this actually runs periodically every 24 hours right now. And it already has a couple of keys in our demo that it has identified that's never been used. And this actually directly goes into Security Hub findings. So this is the Security Hub side of the things. If you see, unused secrets will come up here as findings, and you can see these are coming from different regions, because we have set it up to get the details from different regions and also multiple different accounts. So unless so these two are two different accounts. You can see the last 4 digits and identify it. So it's multi-account, multi-region setup right now. Now let's look at the Lambda function that is being invoked. This is the Lambda function that we created, and this is available in the GitHub as well. What it's doing is actually it's using it's using list KMS keys, and it's going to get the list of all KMS keys. And then after that, which is what it's doing in key evaluation section. And once it gets that data, it'll go and call describe KMS key to check when it was last accessed or whether it was ever accessed or not. Now, I would definitely say one of the things that we would do in next few weeks is change that never access to first check whether that key was created 90 days before. We don't want somebody just created a key today or tomorrow to show up on the dashboard. So that's something you can change off and say, hey, I want to make sure the key was created at least 60 days or 30 days or 90 days back, and it's still never used. So that's a very good important thing to filter out. So that's something you can change. You can download this code and update as you want. So once it identifies that, it tags it as, it basically tags it as compliant and non-compliant. If it is not compliant, it goes and shows up in your Security Hub. Once this evaluation is done,
Hey,
When you say
tags it, is that like an actual AWS tag, or is that?
No, it's not. So, tag may not be on. It would set its status. There is an attribute, status attribute, which you can see here.
Nice.
It will set it up to non-compliant if it is falling in that direction. Okay,
Yeah, so it's not a tag, it's
it's
flags that it's
basically
non-compliant.
so every config finding has a JSON format values and attributes, and that attributes is set to non-compliant. So once we have done this, the next question comes in like, how do you install this AWS config rule across multiple accounts, multiple regions within my organization? What is the easiest way to do that? Because you don't want to go into each account and region and install this. And you also want to have some control about how you pick and choose these accounts and regions, because you may not be using all the regions that are available, right? So for that, what we have created is a CloudFormation template, and we'll walk you through the steps on how to do that. And those CloudFormation templates are also available online. What we are going to do is we are going to use stack sets. So we are going to create a CloudFormation stack set. Anybody is aware? Everybody's used CloudFormation here. Anybody? Who all have used CloudFormation? Okay. All right. So for those who have not, like, it's an automation infrastructure as a code service available in AWS, and you can install stuff using that across your organization and accounts. So let's go to the CloudFormation template. The only thing you need to know is to run the stack sets in CloudFormation, you need to actually run it from the management account to create the sets. Let's see. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a stack set. So I have the command. So this one is actually going to create a stack set. If you look at this command, it does a couple of things. First, it creates an unused key stack set in your management account. It's asking for two parameter values, which is one is the primary region and the name of the role that it needs to create to run these actions. This is very important because when you create a config rule within an account across multiple regions, right? IAM roles should only be created once, because IAMs are global services. So you cannot create a role every time it runs in each region. So what we have done is we said make one region primary and just create your role while you're creating config rule in that region. Once it's created, you're good to go. You don't, in the next iteration of the same account, different regions, you don't need to again create the IAM role. So that's basically what it is. So I'm just going to copy this in. And you can also look at the CloudFormation template in the code in the GitHub library, which I'll walk you through. So that should create the stack set. The wrong tab. So this is the stack set it just created. KMS unused demo. Now what I need to do is make sure this is installed in every region and account. So for that we have, and all these commands are also provided in the GitHub repository. So let's look at this one. We are using service rules so that management account can install stuff in child accounts or member accounts. There is one thing that we need to be understanding is when you use service managed role for creating stacks across multiple accounts, you need to use your organization unit ID, and you need to make sure you give specific accounts if you want to only do it in specific ones. So what this command or that line of parameter is actually doing is, of all the accounts in that OU, I only want to install it in this specific account 3606, and that's why I put the intersection as the filter parameter. I can also do a union. So if, let's say, I want to do this OU all accounts and a set of accounts from other location, I can do that, and I can just say create a union of all this and install it in those accounts. And then over here in the regions section, I specify which regions this will go and install it. So all I'm doing is I'm going to install it in this account in US West 1 region, and all I have to do is run this. And remember, this has to run in the management account. Once it's run, let's go to, it should be running in this account. This is the account. This is the US West 1 account, and you can see this stack set is, the stack is actually running in there. Once it's created, it will actually go in and create the config rule for you. Now, while it's doing that, let's look at the AWS sample. If you see, this is the config rule. And in this, there are three very important things that we need. One is obviously the parameters that we are passing, the primary region, and that what we talked about. The second one is the IAM role. You need to make sure your IAM role has the right access. So if you see, this is the IAM role that the Lambda function is going to use to scan through your KMS keys. So make sure it has the list key and describe key available to it. I put the whole Lambda function inside the CloudFormation. You can keep it outside and import it as well. And then this is where this is very important. You need to make sure you give the AWS config access to invoke that Lambda, and that's what that code does. And then this is the actual configuration rule that is in part of it. Now, you can create multiple config rules like this, which is specific to your requirement as well. Now let's go back and see. There you go. So this is create complete. That means it's created the resource that we need. So we have the config rule created. And if you go to AWS config rules over here, you should be able to see the unused KMS key rule over here created. And it just ran right now. So it just ran right now, and it collected the keys that are not compliant. So now that we have the CloudFormation, we are able to install it multiple accounts. Now let's switch and go and see the Athena side of it, where we are actually going to run the queries. So like I said, when the data is created and everything is collected, you can see this database that is created by Security Lake. This is where all the findings is coming in. And you can see these tables within that database that is created by Security Lake again. This is all done out of the box. You don't have to do anything. It's created on its own. And then you can run the query that you want to identify. So what I'll do is I'm running this query, and keep an eye on the table, right? So this table name is actually going to say SH, or Security Hub Findings 2.0. That is where all the config rule details will show up. If you run that query right now, and I'm saying the name of the config rule that was run, it will actually collect all the data from across region. And you can see this is kind of not something like readable, but all the data is in there. And this is across multiple accounts and regions.
And again, the reason we're taking the config data and putting it in the Security Hub is because of that lack of integration, native integration with config and Amazon Security Lake. So we put it in Security Hub first as a finding, and then that goes into Security Lake.
Yeah. And similarly, you can also do the same with the CloudTrail details. So this will have all the, this table will have all the data related to KMS and all the actions that were performed on KMS. Once you do this, now you have the query, you have to build a query to actually meet your requirements. So this is a sample query that we created to identify all the unused keys across, and we have provided the sample queries that we used as in the code as well. This actually, I over-selected. This actually would give you all the details of unused keys. All right. So this is a little bit more formatted. We had to use some little bit of regex and stuff like that to get the actual data we need. But you can see the data is more clean over here, and you're able to see the data. But this is not enough. We want to go ahead and try to use this with QuickSight, right? We want to have some visualization on top of it. So once you have your Athena query here and you have all the data, all the columns that you need, you have identified that for that visualization, we go to QuickSight. And this is QuickSight. And over here, we use that same Athena query and create a data set. So in QuickSight, you'll have to go, so QuickSight, how many of you actually are aware of what is QuickSight? Okay. All right, so for those who don't know what is QuickSight, QuickSight is basically an AWS service to visualization, creating dashboards and stuff like that. And it has direct integration with Athena, so it's just easier to build it. If you have any other services that can integrate and query and build dashboard on top of QuickSight, on top of Security Lake, you're happy to use. You can use that as well. There's no issue with that. But we are using QuickSight over here. Now what I can do is I can actually create a data set. I'll say create an Athena data set. And I'll just give the same name. Now, when I create it, one thing you need to be aware, this can only work if your QuickSight has access to your database. And at the back end, Security Lake is actually using lake formation to give you access to the database. So you will have to do some configuration to make sure the right access is available. Once you create that, you will be able to see the Security Lake database inside the code, inside your dashboard like you're seeing right now. That means your configuration is right and it has access. You will use custom SQL. You'll put the query that you created over here. And we'll go to preview data. So this is where it creates its data. I'll click apply. There are two modes to creating data set in QuickSight. One is direct query and one is Spice. Direct query is every time your dashboard loads, there is a query that will run at the back end and it will get the data and show on the dashboard. It's a little slow, and I'll show you when I show you the dashboard how it looks. But if you use Spice, it caches the data, it runs the query once, and it caches all the data and keeps it for you. And once that data is there, it'll just directly show on the dashboard, so your dashboard won't have the buffering part of it.
But the trade-off there is it's not real-time data, right? It's at least a point in time.
Yeah. We just save. And just save and publish. So now that this is saved, this means this data set is now ready to use. You can create a dashboard using it. back to that. So all you have to do is go to analytics, go unified dashboard. So this is the existing dashboard that we already created with all the data that we are gathering right now, right? So if you see quickly, like this is for KMS, we have the most operations that are being performed by KMS, which are the top keys without auto rotation enabled, which IAM role has the most denied access to, like which one is getting denied when it's trying to access. So this is very important just to know. There are like 7 unused keys. And then we have tabularized the data at the bottom, wherein it actually goes and gives you a little bit more details about what those keys are doing and stuff like that. Similarly, we have created for certificates as well. So if you see upcoming certificates in next 60 days and stuff like that. And the same thing we did with Secrets Manager.
The other thing, can you go back to the certificate screen? Just as a real world example of something I've seen customers do that this might be useful for. Kind of an odd one, but the interesting one is, like I'll see customers that say, we've like kind of centralized our PKI and we only want certificates issued from this account, right? Like this is where we get our code signing certificates and where we get all these private certificates we use for our PKI. And so, those customers put in place like SCPs or service control policies to say, you can only create a CA in this account, or you can only issue certificates from this account and get distributed elsewhere. It's not that common. The CA one is a little more common. But I did work with a customer that wanted all the certificates kind of issued in this account, at least for private CA. And so, they might look at that and say, I see other accounts issuing certificates in my environment. I see other accounts that are creating CAs in my organization, and I don't want that, right? So like, I think, there are some interesting ways you could use these dashboards or similar dashboards to have a detective control or kind of a way to analyze how these are being used across your org and kind of vet your preventative controls, right? Like you always kind of want that detective control, defense in depth kind of thing to catch anything that doesn't get caught by your preventative controls. And so I do see customers use like dashboards like this for those types of things where what is the efficacy of my preventative controls I put in place, right? Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Now we can add the data set that we created from here.
And I can't remember if on the post-quantum question, did we include key algorithm? Is that something we're looking at? I don't think it is, right? Key algorithm, like for certificates that you issue? Like if it's RSA or ECC?
We didn't, but you can modify the query to get that information. You have to write unless it's part of, the two things you need to be aware of. If it is not being logged in CloudTrail, you'll have to basically write a custom config rule or something to get that detail.
Yeah.
Unless it's being published somewhere. So there has to be a way to get that data.
Yeah, like so you could look for, today in ACM you can't issue post-quantum certificates anyway because this is a whole other topic, but the industry hasn't really figured out what a post-quantum certificate should look like because their size is really big and so creates problems. So they're still kind of figuring that out. But I think what you could do at the very least is create a custom rule similar to what we've done and look at in describe certificate field, it tells you this is RSA key, this is an ECC key, or ECDSA, I guess. And so you could look at, how many RSA certificates do I have in use in AWS, for example, at least from ACM. So, it kind of helps get you there. It doesn't get to all the Cypher Suite stuff, but you can at least look at the types of keys you have. And I will also call out on the post-quantum thing. You may have seen a post last week. You can now use MLDSA, one of the NIST-approved post-quantum algorithms, to sign things with KMS, which is great.
Yeah.
Just a plug for that. Not related to this session.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing all these dashboards. Can you give examples of similar dashboards? This is not important.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I would say, you're far from the first customer that has asked for that. We are a customer-obsessed company, so it's something we're looking at. Let's talk after. But yes, I totally agree. I think while this is useful, I would much rather have a solution for customers where they click one button and they get this stuff, right? So yes, that is something we would like to build and we're looking at, but I can't say too much more than that. Yeah.
Can you pop back to the secrets manager dashboard?
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of interrupted Praveen anyway, so I think he's going to talk a little bit more about secrets manager too. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we tried to simplify as much as we could on this with CloudFormation and Security Lake setup. But once you have Security Lake setup, it's pretty easy. The only part where it gets a little work is formulating the query and showing it on dashboard to the way you want. Actually, creating the dashboard is also interesting. You could actually use Q for Q, which is basically the GenAI service for AWS. You can use Q for QuickSight, and I can actually ask it. I don't know if I formulated the command correctly. I don't remember, but it can actually create a graph or visualization for you as required, and it would actually do that for you. Let's see.
Yeah, I kind of love this because for that like executive kind of use case, I mean, it would be good for everyone, but I think like, I imagine, CISOs going in here and like, I don't want to look at these dashboards even, right? Like they can just type a natural language query. How many how many certificates are expiring in the next 60 days? Or I don't know, some natural language to just tell me what I want to see, or give me the information I want to see. And it works quite well without really having to do any tinkering with it. So
Yeah.
I kind of love this.
So it could generally basically create a dashboard which you can just directly integrate into your dashboard site. So like right now it just created one. All I have to do is click add and it'll add it. It's basically adding it. And this is what I was telling, the buffering that you're seeing is because it's the direct query. And obviously if you want to later change it, you can go here and change it as well. The other good thing about QuickSight dashboard and Q integration is you could actually get an executive summary of this whole dashboard. So if I click here, it would actually go in and give me an executive summary for Secrets Manager based on the findings that we have on the dashboard. So it's actually generating one right now. And this just gives you easily, instead of going in each dashboard and checking what is happening, you can actually go and check the executive dashboard and say, get the details of what is happening. So it's a quick high-level overview. So those are the key things that we wanted to talk about. So this project is a sample for you to get started on building a dashboard or monitoring capability for your crypto resources. And we want to make sure it helps you reduce, do cost optimization by finding unused resources. And also you should be able to see if there are any risks. Like if there is certain kind of operations that are happening too much in your account, you need to be aware of those things. So those are the stuff that are the key, right? So let's switch. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, like Praveen said, kind of our key takeaways we want you to think about are, think about what, if you're building something like this yourself or using a partner solution, think about what are the important metrics for your business that you want to monitor. Focus on like specific goals that you have. We want to clean up our resources to reduce costs or just reduce complexity. We want to make sure we're being compliant and are able to easily prove that compliance to auditors. Maybe whatever really your kind of key goals are. Think about that beforehand so you can adequately prepare your data and your queries and things like that. Follow our existing best practices for logging. Centralize your security logs into one account. Is one of our recommendations. And then, kind of my obligatory tip as a cryptography person is encrypt everywhere. Use encryption wherever you can. Encryption is offered in every AWS service where you store data, and almost all of them are integrated with AWS KMS, so please do that. And lastly, I wanted to plug another good Reinforce session that is happening later. I forget the date, I apologize, but if you click that, or if you go to that QR code, it'll be the event catalog, and that session is really about monitoring your permissions on KMS keys, and so it's kind of similar. They have some similar dashboards and things, but you're able to actually see like when are the key policy or the access policy on my KMS keys, how are they changing and who's changing them, and so it's a pretty cool session. So check that out too. I'll leave that up for a second. And then lastly, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. And please take the survey and tell us what we can do better and what we did well. And again, like, feel free to go to the GitHub page and do pull requests or give us comments and tell us what you'd like to see us add. And we definitely want to keep building this and adding to it to make it a more full-fledged solution. So again, appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.